Notre Dame 27, Penn State 24. I mentioned off the top, this was an absolute classic. This was one that if you're playing NCAA 08, like this goes up in the trophy room, that you won this game, right? This is going to be talked about, I think, for quite some time. It was as ugly of a rock fight as we predicted it would be, Trey. And we talked about neither team really having the consistent explosive offense. Both teams need kind of the home run. Maybe on the 2-2 pitch, we're going the other way and we're sneaking one out into the bleachers. Jeremiah Love was not fully healthy. He had a knee brace on. He still managed to look just fine. That touchdown run that he made from like the 3-yard line might be the greatest 3 yards in Notre Dame history. But just initial takeaways from a 3-point victory over Penn State. When you look back now, I guess, 24 hours, what's still kind of stuck lingering with you?
The ending of that one, just the gut-wrenching ending of that one, if you're a Penn State fan, where it felt like you had all the momentum of the world. You get a huge stop for Notre Dame to stop Notre Dame from kicking a game-winning field goal, and then just literally throw it away. Drew Aller I really didn't have turnovers on the bingo card in this one. I thought the defenses would make big plays, but I really trusted both of these quarterbacks to take care of the football. You look at it, Riley Leonard had 2 interceptions. Drew Aller obviously had the huge interception at the end of the game, and a lot more. Aller had a couple that could have been interceptions, right, that were bailed out by defensive penalties in the red zone. So just really poor decision-making. I was really surprised by that because he's a guy that has his faults, has a lot of awesome tools that we've talked about on this podcast, but really takes care of the football. But credit to Notre Dame, digging deep, finding a way to win. Credit to Steve Angeli, right? Coming in off the bench when Riley Leonard gets hurt in the first half. I think it was the first half. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong.
At the end of the first half.
6 of 7 for 44 yards, not jumping off the stat page, but driving the bus, keeping it forward and keeping it going forward and not leading to disaster, right? I know he took a couple sacks, and I've heard a couple other shows joke that if he stayed in, he probably would have just been driven into the dirt a couple more times. But shout out to him for keeping the bus going forward and keeping that from spinning into a disaster for Notre Dame, because it could have been really sketchy if he came in and didn't take care of the football.
Well, and it put points on the board, right? That was their first points they got on the board, was at that end of that drive that he finished. There's a moment there where I was watching him sling it, and I was like, are we sure that we want Ryan Leonard to come back into this game? This guy's kind of dealing. And obviously, it's the backup infatuation. He makes a couple good throws, and you start to go, whoa. Like, I get that. But, yeah, you got to give him his props. He kept him in it.
Well, he completed nearly half of what Riley Leonard did offensively through the air. 15 to 23 for 223 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. I mean, Leonard, and he said this in the post game, like, he didn't win Notre Dame this game. He owned that, right? That was the defense. That was his running game that got it done. They run for $116.
Snatching ankles and souls, man.
Yeah, it was Austin Westlake's own Jaden Greathouse with the big breakaway touchdown. But that first half, man, going back to the Angeli drive, it was 10-0 Penn State. It felt like it was 24-0 Penn State. They were more physical. They were more disciplined. They got whatever they wanted defensively. I mean, Notre Dame was twisted up in knots, right? And at that point, Jeremiah Love finishes 11 carries, 45 yards, and a score. Nobody else really did anything in the running game. It was kind of a conglomeration of a couple of little contributions that got you even to $116. But going into the break, it felt like a miracle. It felt like something out of Rudy that Notre Dame was even down only 1 score. But then they flipped the script. They come out and they're the only team that scores in the third quarter. And suddenly it's 10-10 going to the fourth quarter. And then, just a little bit of a shootout breaks out. But Garrett, you look at Notre Dame and what they're able to adjust. The defense put the clamps on Penn State. They started to get pressure into the backfield on Drew Aller. The offense just finds a way, just starts scratching and clawing and getting yards. And that's kind of the Notre Dame brand of football. It's not pretty. It's never been sexy this year, unless, Love is hurdling someone and setting a triple jump record in the Coliseum. but they've been disciplined enough to find those extra inches, those hidden yards, and continue to win football games.
Well, and they just know their style of ball. They're totally fine going a couple drives without a touchdown if it means they're playing the field position game and pinning you back at the 5-yard line and forcing you to drive 95 yards to do it, right? And early that wasn't working. I mean, Penn State's first touchdown drive was a 90-yard drive. They went the length of the field. And at that point, I was sitting there, I'm like, uh-oh, Notre Dame, your style ain't working tonight. You can't move the ball. They just moved it at will. It could be a long night, but they stuck with it, right? They stuck with their game. That they played the game that they wanted to play, and ultimately it ended up working out. And for all that we can give him crap for, Riley Leonard didn't play that bad of a game, right? Like he averaged 1.8 on the ground. That's not fantastic. You average some sack yards into that or whatever it is, but not fantastic for him. I think his longest rush was like 6 yards or something like that. He wasn't effective as a runner, but passing for 223 is a big deal. And I know a bunch of that came on that Great House score, which I just mentioned, where he snatched like 4 ankles, and thousands of souls of Penn State fans just watching that happen was immaculate. But yeah, they're totally fine to rely on their defense. And I can't tell you that there were probably a bunch of Notre Dame fans that were excited that Penn State got the ball with 47 seconds left, but I can tell you there are a lot of them that as soon as they came down with that pick, there are probably a bunch of them that were like, yeah, of course, why not? Of course, this is going to be the way that this is going to go because our defense pulls through. They get it done. They're a fantastic team, and they play great defense. They believe in each other. They got their style, and if you can see even a little bit more product out of them, if you can see a little bit better, completion percentage out of Riley Leonard, if you see a little bit more rushing out of him, maybe get Love a chance to get his knee a little healthier, gets a little bit more explosive, we could be looking at a Notre Dame championship. It's not completely out of the question.
Might get to party.
I'm walking away from
80s.
today. Yeah, I'm walking away from today thinking Notre Dame has a much higher chance than I did going into this semifinal one.
It certainly, there is a path, right? There is a way, there's a formula that Notre Dame wins the national championship, which is just incredible. Trey, I know you've got some designated driver duties. So last word from you on this game. What else stood out to you from Notre Dame, Penn State? What were you impressed by, disappointed?
Man, I'm still impressed with Notre Dame's defense. They didn't have the havoc plays on the defensive line in this game, and they still found a way. Man, you got to have game-breaking receivers to go against this Notre Dame secondary. I can't wait to watch the Ohio State receivers against this Notre Dame secondary because you don't have somebody that can get separation, which Penn State did not, obviously. You're going to have a bad time against this Notre Dame defense. It's just like we've seen it time and time again this year. And man, on the other side of that coin, I really want to see Drew Aller with an actual wide receiver. Like, can we please find a way to get him just a speedster that he can chuck it down to at some point in the transfer portal this offseason? Like, I just really want to see this guy with a truly elite receiver. Just one. Like, can we please find a way to do that, James Franklin, and help your guy out? Because the stats, what was it? It took until the final drive, right, for him to actually connect with a wide receiver. Is that what the stat was?
No, didn't ever end up doing it.
I thought he had one. But
I don't know that he had Harrison Wallace III lost 3 yards. So
right.
maybe that's
nothing positive. Yeah.
Yeah. No, 0 yards receiving from the wide receivers, which, Keandre Lambert-Smith immediately got on Twitter and said, y'all owe me a bunch of apologies.
Yeah.
I'm sure Dante Cephas was
that was the first thing I thought of when Trey's like, I'd love to see him with one good receiver. I'm like, yeah, maybe they should target like Keandre Lambert-Smith in the portal.
I know.
I'm just messing with you.
Dude, and we talked about that in the preseason.
Drew Aller had -4 receiving yards in the box score, and he almost had more receiving yards than all the wide receivers combined.
Yeah, that's scary.
I don't remember that happening. I don't know why that's in the box score.
That feels like one of those like ESPN messed up or something like that.
Yeah,
wouldn't be the first time that they fat fingered something. Trey, great note to get you out of here on. Be safe, keep everybody else safe. We'll talk to you in the next one. Yeah, great point. We talked about that in the preseason. That Penn State lost their weapons, their go-tos, and that was one of the things that I remember specifically. I went back and found the clip when Penn State was winning because I thought I was going to have to eat some crow. We had a clip back from April or May where I announced my intentions to jump off the Penn State bandwagon. If you're new, if you're here in year 3 of the show, year 1, very high on Penn State. Year 2, I picked Penn State to go to the playoff, right? So this preseason, I had to draw a line in the sand. And I gave a bunch of reasons why I believe that Penn State was not a winner, why they couldn't hang a conference banner, which almost happened, didn't, and why they weren't going to be a threat to win a national championship. And the lack of wide receiver talent was one of those issues. When you have guys like Keandre Lambert-Smith walking out of that room when they are the clear-cut number 1 option, that was sending off alarm bells for me. And we talked about Drew Aller as well. What a just head-scratching performance. You talk about the moment being too big for a kid. This was it. It was easy, Garrett, for people to clown on James Franklin and say that the big game got him again. And listen, we have done our fair share of that in our analytics. It's why we picked against Penn State and just about every chance that we got in a big game. But to me, this one was on the quarterback. James Franklin had nothing to do with the poor throws that Drew Aller had, the inability to keep offensive drives going in the second half. The defense did its job. I mean, the defense played really well for the Nittany Lions, but when you look at the head-scratching decisions that Aller made time and time again, especially in that second half, like I can't ethically feel good about putting this game on James Franklin.
I mean, it's hard to put the game on the guy who wasn't on the yacht, and I don't know if that's a for sure thing or not. I'm pretty sure that wasn't him.
Definitely was fake.
Pretty sure that wasn't him. But either way, no, it's I don't know. I have a hard time with this one because I really think both teams played well. Like this, you mentioned it off the top. This is one that might get talked about for a long time, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that both teams really did play well. There were limitations, but these were 2 very good football teams that just kind of grinded it out. And I think the better team won, but this might be one of those games where you play it 10 times, it gets mixed 5-5. Like these are 2 very well-matched teams, very evenly matched teams. And at the end of the day, Notre Dame made 1 or 2 more plays that Penn State just didn't. And yeah, you can look at the receiver room, but like a guy like Tyler Warren is a difference maker. And he played well in this game, not extremely well. Definitely needed to make another couple of catches in order for them to have won this game. But I mean, this is one where, if Tyler Warren, you look at his stat page, he's got 6 for 75. If he's talking like 8 for 91, Penn State probably won this game. And if you just do a little bit better in a couple of places, this is a place where Penn State wins. And yeah, you can put it on Drew Aller, but I'd like to look at the quarterback, performances against Notre Dame over the course of the year. I don't know if it's so much moment being too big as it was like, yeah, Notre Dame's freaking good. They're just really good on defense and they get the job done. And so, yeah, there were moments and yeah, there were really some head scratchers with Aller, but man, I'm not going to crucify the kid on this one. He had been really good the last several weeks. He had played really well in the back part of the season. And I don't think Penn State's in this position without him. So, yeah, wasn't his best game. Definitely not. But that's what good defenses do is they make quarterbacks not play their best game. You can look at that in the Cotton Bowl. Neither of those guys played their best game, and it had to do with 2 good defenses. And it was the same here, right? Really, the only quarterback who I think outperformed expectations was Riley Leonard. I didn't expect him to pass for 223. That was kind of a big number for what I would have expected out of Riley Leonard. I probably expect those 2 stat lines to flip. But, end of the day, better team won, and it had a lot to do with the defense of Notre Dame just stacking up and playing good coverage and forcing tough throws, really tough throws, which Drew Aller did not make.
Well, Notre Dame heads into the national championship having beaten 7 ranked opponents on their schedule this season. They set up the Marcus Freeman Bowl in the national championship. Marcus Freeman, a defensive captain, a linebacker at Ohio State, a coordinator for the Buckeyes. We know that he bleeds scarlet and gray, and yet here he has Notre Dame at a true opportunity to win a championship, really for the first time since the 80s. And we talked about that in the semifinal preview. Yes, they've made the BCS national championship, but we all knew they weren't going to beat Alabama, right? We all knew that those Notre Dame teams were not actually cut out to claim a championship. This Notre Dame team, though, has assumed the identity of Marcus Freeman. And I think that's what set this Irish team apart. You look at even like a Penn State. what's James Franklin's identity, right? I don't know that I have a clear-cut answer, but I know what Marcus Freeman's identity is, right? It's attention to detail, it's dedication, it's playing for each other. And we saw that this entire season. After that Northern Illinois loss, the entire country counted Notre Dame out. Season's over. There's no way they're making the playoff. There's no way that they're going to run the rest of the table after a loss like that and deserve to get in. And not only did they rise to that challenge, they fixed the issues, right? They found a way to execute. Mitch Jeter gets healthy finally as a kicker, and suddenly they start executing even on special teams. And suddenly Notre Dame becomes a very physical, tough-nosed, detail-oriented football team around Marcus Freeman, who that's his entire personality. And, we'll preview this in this upcoming week for a full national championship preview, full X's and O's. We'll dive into the stats. But like Trey was saying right before he jumped off, suddenly now, both because I think we've been impressed with Notre Dame and because there were some flaws that we saw from Ohio State, there is a path for Notre Dame to win a national championship. And that's something that we've really never been able to say in our lifetimes.
Yeah, and as simple as it might sound, the path really to not get too pedantic with it is just, hey, Notre Dame, go find a way to score more points than Ohio State for 4 quarters. Like that's as close as you can possibly get to it, right? Like a lot of people talk about, in the course of the season that everyone talks strength of schedule and making sure your resume is good. And they talk about a bad stretch of home games or, oh man, we got to go on a road trip or something like that. And then once you get to the playoff, we did this too. You talk about path, right? You talk about, ooh, that's a tough team. That's a easier team, whatever it is. Doesn't matter anymore. Notre Dame, you are 4 quarters away of let's play some good football. Let's get the ball to bounce a little bit weird. Let's get a tip pass interception off one of their awesome receivers. Doesn't matter how. Let's just find a way over 4 quarters to play a little bit better than those guys, and you get to go lift that trophy up. And that's something I know a lot of Notre Dame fans have been waiting to see. It's been a little bit since that's happened. And yeah, I think that you can make the case that defense is playing well enough that, you saw what Texas defense was able to do to them. They scored 28, but it's really more scored 21 because of that scoop and score. So I'm not a great offensive night for Ohio State. I think Notre Dame's defense is better. I think they got better players. I think they play better as a unit. If they're able to do this, if they're able to kind of make this run and finish this off, it's going to be because they shut down those Ohio State receivers. They found a way to win in man coverage. They got after the quarterback and made Will Howard uncomfortable. And then on the offensive side, it's just going to be you gladiatored your way through this, right? You, Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Love and all those boys lowered the shoulder and just gladiated their way to a victory. And that's going to be the formula. And if they can get that to happen, yeah, they'll be holding the trophy at the end of the year.
Gracious, how about